Thanks for joining us on Times Now. This is the most exhaustive, immersive countdown to what will be a truly historic moment. The countdown is on and the moon is in the direct line of sight of Chandrayaan-3. India is in fervent prayer from Havan to Namaz for the crucial final 19 minutes that will determine the mission's fate. These last moments, viewers, have been dubbed as 19 minutes of terror, with the tension building up like in a T20 match. On commands from Bengaluru, the Vikram, which is the lander, will initiate its descent downwards to the moon's surface from an altitude of about 30 kilometers, navigating a rough braking phase, altitude hold phase, fine braking phase, and then the most important, the terminal descent phase. Before we open this up, let's first break this down for you. Pratibha, our colleague, joining us. Pratibha, it's a challenge, but I'm sure we've sorted everything inside the spacecraft and the lander.
Absolutely. Lessons learned from Chandrayaan-2. So let's take our viewers through each of these phases to understand why this time around things are going to be different. Just to imagine if we are on the moon's surface, let's tell you how this is going to unfold. When the rover is about 25 kilometers from the surface of the moon, that's when the crucial phase really begins. So the distance is going to be 25 kilometers. At this point, the entire module is at a horizontal phase. So it is horizontal from the moon's surface, and this is Vikram's orientation that we're talking about, and it gets lower and lower towards the moon's surface. This is known as the rough braking phase. But immediately after that, the next phase comes in. This each time lowering further and further towards the surface of the moon. But we talk about the next phase here. This is also very critical. Remember, this is where the lessons learned from Chandrayaan-2 will come in. This is the altitude holding phase, where it is 7.4 kilometers away from the moon. So that's the altitude here, and for 10 seconds it's going to be in this position, but it is going to change, getting closer and closer towards the surface of the moon. Now going to the next phase, and this is the most critical because this is the phase where the Chandrayaan-2 had faltered. So in hovering down to the surface of the moon, because of the velocity being reduced little by little, this is where a technical glitch had come in, and we saw the Chandrayaan-2 crash landing. So if we go to the next phase of it, that's when the important part comes in, and this is called the fine braking phase, and this is where Chandrayaan-2 had failed. So when it comes closer, the velocity needs to be reduced. At this point, when it's being lowered to the moon's surface, it is at 1.68 kilometer per second, which is almost 10 times the speed of an aeroplane, for a better understanding. So as it lowers, the velocity needs to be lowered further and further. It needs to come at zero at horizontal as well as the vertical sphere. Now, fine braking phase that we're talking about here, this is where things get all the more challenging, where lessons from Chandrayaan-2 will come in. And at this point, it will be 6.8 kilometers away. Now, after that, it comes in further, and this is the final phase that we're talking about. If we come to the final phase of it, the entire phase until now is going to take about 11 minutes, after which the crucial few minutes left, that's where it'll be spending, where the lander will hover for about 12 seconds. This is when it's looking at the lunar surface. It's looking at what the surface is like, whether it can make a soft landing here or not. And this is where another lesson comes in. Remember, previously it was 500 by 500 meter. Now it has been expanded completely. So the landing site has been increased to over 4 kilometers by 2.5 kilometers. So that's the reason why it has a much larger space where it can softly land. So this time around, it is expected to be a success.
Thank you, Prasad. Through those details. Let's quickly open this up. We have an eminent panel. Abhijit Chavda is an astrophysicist, Vice Rajan, scientist and honorary professor at ISRO. Dr. William Selvamurthy, former DG, DRDO, currently Chancellor of the Amity University. Pranav Sharma, astronomer, space historian. I have Edward Bloomer, Senior Astronomy Manager at the Royal Museums. Shantanu is also with us, space enthusiast, astronomer, space communicator. And Kimi Pandey will be joining us shortly. But Abhijit Chavda, good evening. Your first thoughts?
Good evening. Yes, it's a very exciting phase of the final phase of the Chandrayaan-3 landing. I think we are about 2 hours away from the go, no-go, from the final landing time. So I think now that go, no-go decision has been taken. And so there was a possibility that maybe we will postpone the mission until the 27th of this month, but I think we are past that now, so I think we are going ahead with the landing. Very exciting phase. And there are some changes in Chandrayaan-3 compared to Chandrayaan-2. I mean, the number of thrusters that we have is less. We have 4 thrusters, and there's been some redundancy that's built in, so which means that when we are landing, when the final landing is happening, even if 2 thrusters fail, only 2 are working, we'll still be able to land properly. So there have been some changes and some lessons learned, and I'm pretty sure that we will succeed this time around, and it's gonna be the opening of a new chapter in lunar exploration history. It's the first time a nation is landing in the South Pole region. It's not exactly at the South Pole, it's in the South Pole region, and over there landing is quite a bit challenging, but it's a very interesting region because of the possible presence of water ice in permanently shadowed craters in this region, and also because of what other features and
okay,
and,
just hold your thoughts. Some breaking inputs coming in. Avijit, I'll just come back to you. Siddharth Talia now joining us with more information. As we speak, we are getting more details of Chandrayaan's descent. Siddharth, what do you have?
So what we have in front of us, Pranesh, is a graphical depiction of the descent of the Vikram Lander just minutes away from the time that it actually lands on the lunar surface. Pratibha did in fact take us through some of the details about this earlier, but let me just take you through this graphical depiction as well. So once the descent actually begins in what is called the rough braking phase, you have approximately 2.5 minutes. We're talking about 690 seconds. That's about 6 to 7 minutes of the rough braking phase, where the descent is actually in a plateau kind of a curve, and then you have 10 seconds of the altitude hold phase, followed by the fine braking phase, which is approximately 175 seconds, a little over 2.5 minutes. And thereafter, of course, in the fine braking phase, as we mentioned earlier, that Chandrayaan-2 actually developed certain snags, and as a result of which it eventually crashed. But then following the fine braking phase is what we have, the terminal descent phase, where you actually have a descent which is far more pronounced than some of its earlier phases, where it's a time span of approximately 131 seconds, where the rover, where the lander, I beg your pardon, actually descends completely vertically, and then it hovers around for approximately 22 seconds before initiating another vertical descent on the lunar surface. So this is basically the trajectory of the descent that's been captured on a graph. This has been put out by ISRO. The final few minutes, the 19 minutes of terror as they're called, which tracks the descent of the Vikram Lander.
Thank you for taking us through those details, Siddharth. Pranav, we'll talk about this and we'll put it on the big screen right behind us. Let me quickly bring in our reporters. Deepak, you've been speaking to a lot of people. You are at a place which is in the thick of things. What's the mood there?
Well, the modes of anticipation here, Pranesh, as we speak, things are getting set here at MOX is track. This is, of course, a mission control complex where everything is being closely monitored. Very soon, of course, what they will do is make it an automated system. Nothing much will be done from here. The systems are programmed in such a way that for the last few minutes, something that Siddharth was explaining, all of it will be done by the lander module by itself. So it will, of course, be monitored. Now, we should also understand, Pranesh, that Chandrayaan-2 as well is going to assist Chandrayaan-3. Now, viewers may ask how. Last time around, there was an orbiter that took the module into the lunar orbit. Even now, the Chandrayaan-2 orbiter is sending data, information to MOX here in Bengaluru, based on which, of course, they can assess where exactly they need to land, or, the timing of the landing, after which they've decided to land today at 6:04. If things are not favorable, they can even change that time. So a lot of options this time with the scientists here at MOX. As we speak, I'm going to ask my video journalist to show you the screen that you see there. Right up in just a few moments from now, where they will be showing us what's happening inside MOX, that is Mission Control Complex, and of course the scientists. Last time, while the pictures did come on there, it was a mood where people, of course, were glued to their systems. They were checking for all the final entries that they need to make, all the measures that need to be employed to ensure that this particular landing is safe. The last few seconds are going to be crucial, Pranesh, because that's where there was a glitch last time. But the scientists at ISRO have been maintaining that every bit of the operation they've thought through it in their minds and in through the programs, in through the supercomputers, and right now the execution manually on the lunar surface is anticipated to make India the fourth country, only the fourth country in the world to make a soft landing on the surface of the moon.
Deepak, stay with us. Y.S. Rajan, scientist, honorary professor at ISRO, someone who knows a lot of details about this. Mr. Rajan, thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. What do you make of what we've achieved so far and your thoughts going forward the next 1.5 to 2 hours? All right, we'll go to Mr. Rajan in just a bit. But Pranav, we were talking about this. Just break it down, for the common man. What are we talking about? From a speed of about 6,000 kilometers per hour, the Chandrayaan-3 will slow down to about 100, 125 kilometers per hour?
See, the important thing that is essential for a soft landing is when you're engineering a soft landing, you're basically taking the entire space into account while you're engineering it. So when the site was chosen, the terrace, the terrain, the topology and everything was taken into account and everything was moduled in, and that's why we have an automatic landing module that will be circulated right here. So what happens is that while you're maneuvering a lander such as this, you're bringing it closer to the surface, and the fundamental definition of soft landing is that the velocity has to be zero at zero altitude, which fundamentally means that it just lands there with no movement. Because if it has any kinetic energy at that point, it will thrust in. I mean, we've done hard landing. You remember the moon impact probe that we had in Chandrayaan-1. So we did that intentionally. Yeah. Right here, it is not that important. The reason one has to go through the entire phases wherein we are doing the rough braking phase, where we very slowly basically bringing the velocity down, and it doesn't happen
with the altitude.
With the altitude, in respect to the altitude. It doesn't happen technically. I mean, this is the phase wherein at some point there might be a situation wherein it doesn't descend
like it is
in the gradient which is shown right here.
Yes.
It might just increase and then slowly come down. Yeah. So all of this will happen. But the importance of soft landing in going through all those phases is to ensure that the missions that we are going to do next have that kind of technology.
Okay, now let me bring in the insider, Y.S. Rajan, scientist, honorary professor at ISRO. Mr. Rajan, good evening, sir. We are having a few issues connecting to you. Glad to have you on the show. Your thoughts as we approach the final few hours?
Yes, I am looking for it, because in another, I think around 5:15 or so, from there the most critical moments will start. Of course, these rough braking, fine braking are equally important. They will also decide how that is going to be. But my expectation is these things will take place well, because they have taken care of many of the issues which they noticed in Chandrayaan-2, also added many features. So I am also waiting like all of you, and also praying that rough braking and then the fine braking and then the slow descent will take place to a point which will be very close to 1 meter per second type of thing. And then it goes into automatic landing system. I'm looking forward.
It's not just you, sir, who's praying. The entire nation is praying. At times now, reporters are spread across the nation to capture the mood. Here's a report from Jammu sent by Pradeep Datta.
Everybody today is talking about the moon, and I am with the constellation of this little star and smile on the faces, carrying Tiranga in their hand, India in their heart, and prayers on their lips. Everybody is waiting for that moment when finally the Chandrayaan is going to land. How much is the Josh? Bharat Mata ki?
Okay, Edward Bloomer, India is filled with optimism, positivity. everyone is cheering Vikram and Pragyan. Why is this mission so critical as far as progress in space science is concerned?
Well, I think it's part of a bigger picture of progress in general. India's space agency is making amazing progress and is doing amazing things, and it's part of, I think, a more global approach to sort of concentrate on the moon again. It's obviously always been interest to everybody, but I think this is perhaps the decade of moon exploration in a way that we haven't had in a little while, and I think this current mission is just part of that, part of filling out the picture of what is going on the moon.
All right, Edward Bloomer, thanks for joining us. All our guests stay on. This is the non-stop live coverage. We are building down to touchdown, viewers. 6:04 is the time, the moment when Vikram will land on the lunar surface. This is the south pole of the moon that we are talking about. Stay with Times Now. Let's start with the voices coming in from Patna. Akshay Anand, our colleague, is on the ground. Akshay, take it away.
Yeah, we are at Patna at the RLJP office where crackers are being burst. LJP workers are present here who are lighting up crackers before the safe landing of the Chandrayaan-3. You can see the workers who are lighting up crackers at the RLJP office. Central Minister Pashupati Paras was also present here few minutes back, who just left, and this is the scene of the RLJP office, Patna, where workers of the RLJP are congratulating the scientists of the ISRO and are bursting crackers in Patna. Akash Yadav, who is a president of the National Lok Janshakti Party Chhatra Parishad, is also present here with the workers. Earlier, Pashupati Paras, the central minister, was giving sweets to other workers of the party. Behind me, you can see the scene. Let's speak to Akash Yadav. किस बात का जश्न अभी यहाँ पर चल रहा है?
देखिए, आज पूरे भारत के लिए गर्व की बात है कि आज हमारे भारत के वैज्ञानिकों के वजह से और नरेंद्र मोदी जी के प्रगति के गति के वजह से आज हम भारतीयों का सीना चौड़ा हुआ है और आज हम लोग चांद पे आज हम लोग लैंड करेंगे। तो ये जो चंद्रमा तक का सफ़र जो आज भारत के वैज्ञानिकों के वजह से जो आज हम लोगों को मिला है, इसके लिए आज हम लोग तहे दिल से भारत के तमाम वैज्ञानिकों को शुभकामना, बधाई देते हैं, धन्यवाद देते हैं कि आज उनके वजह से आज हम लोग पूरे विश्व में छाती चौड़ा कर घूमेंगे।
So this was Akash Yadav, leader of the RLJP, and few minutes back Pashupati Paras, Central Minister, was also present here, who was sharing sweets with the other workers here at Patna.
Coming back to you, and we'll keep going back to our reporters. Deepak and Pradeep will be joining us shortly. Our guests still with us. But let's play out this report sent by our colleague Gaurav from Itanagar.
भारत का चंद्रयान-3 आज चंद्रमा की सतह पर उतरेगा और पूरा देश एक साथ मिलकर बोल रहा है चांद पर जय हो। और इस वक्त हम अरुणाचल प्रदेश की राजधानी ईटानगर में, और ईटानगर का ये साइंस सेंटर, जहां पर अरुणाचल के सभी 26 जिलों के साइंस के जो टीचर्स हैं, आज वो विज्ञान के प्रचार प्रसार को लेकर तमाम बातें करेंगे। लेकिन हम आपका तारुफ करा दें यहाँ पर मौजूद तमाम लोगों से। हमारे साथ यहाँ पर साइंस जो म्यूजियम है उसके जो एजुकेटर हैं वो विवेक कुमार जी मौजूद हैं, तमाम टीचर्स मौजूद हैं और हम उनसे बात करेंगे। सबसे पहले बताइए, चंद्रयान को लेकर अरुणाचल एक राज्य जो काफी साइंस से यहाँ पर भी लोगों की काफी रुचि दिखाई दे रही है, किस तरह की बातें निकलकर सामने आ रही है और क्या कहेंगे?
चंद्रयान-3 के प्रति लोगों में बहुत ज़्यादा उत्सुकता है और सभी लोग उस दृश्य को, कैसे हमारा प्रज्ञान रोवर और सॉफ्ट लैंडिंग चंद्रयान का होता है, देखने के लिए अति उत्सुक हैं। आज हमारे यहाँ हमारे साथ में स्टेट कोऑर्डिनेटर और डिप्टी डायरेक्टर टेक्निकल अरुणाचल प्रदेश स्टेट काउंसिल फॉर साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी के डॉक्टर पी लोम्बी जी भी हैं, जो कि चिल्ड्रन साइंस कांग्रेस के कोऑर्डिनेटर, स्टेट कोऑर्डिनेटर हैं। और आज हमारे सभी डिस्ट्रिक्ट से जो टीचर्स हैं और डिस्ट्रिक्ट कोऑर्डिनेटर हैं वो यहाँ जमा हुए हैं इस साल के चिल्ड्रन साइंस कांग्रेस का ओरिएंटेशन प्रोग्राम के लिए।
यही ऐसा होगा कि जो आपने जो आज प्रोग्राम दिखा, जो हमारा लैंडिंग होगा चंद्रयान का, उसी से देख के हमारा एक्साइटमेंट ज्यादा हो जाएंगे।
हम लोग भी वो उस गोल्डन टाइम का गवाह बनने चाहते हैं। बहुत जल्दी हम लोग भी हिस्ट्री क्रिएट करने जा रहे हैं, इसके लिए हम लोग बहुत एक्साइटेड है।
तो चंद्रयान 3 जब से आप यहाँ से हम लोगों का इसरो
टेक ऑफ कराया है, तब से हम लोग फॉलो कर रहे हैं। जो 14 जुलाई को निकला था यहाँ से पृथ्वी से होते हुए, बहुत दिन की यात्रा संपूर्ण करने के बाद आज जब चांद की सतह पर लैंड करेगा तो अच्छा है, तो इस ऐतिहासिक पल का गवाह भी बनेंगे आज सब।
That was a report from Itanagar. Pradeep Datta is also live with us. Pradeep, I'll come to you, but Dr. Baba also joining us, Senior Research Fellow at the Open University. Dr. Baba, good evening. Thank you for joining us on Times Now. Your first thoughts on the mission, on this mission, and why is the South Pole such a big deal, if you could break it down?
This mission, I think it's fantastic. Why the South Pole? Well, we haven't been to the South Pole with a soft lander before, but very simply. So there have been moon landers before, but they've all landed in areas quite close to the equator. And with recent results from different missions, including from Chandrayaan-1, we're beginning to understand that the moon is a very diverse planet, and the South Pole is likely to be very, very different to what was experienced in those previous missions. So I can't wait to, get images of what the South Pole or near the South Pole looks like close up. And, I'm already looking forward to the future when we go there again with, bigger and more powerful instruments. And, there's fantastic science to be done.
Okay.
Right, Pradeep. Buri nazar na hum pe dalo. Somebody should convey that message. With all due sympathy to the scientists in Russia whose Lunar 25 just failed. We are all hoping that it is just a matter of when and not if. When Chandrayaan-3 makes a landing, there is a lot of excitement around people because events like this come once in years and are history making. We have callers joining us to show us what they think about this moment. We've got Ramneek from Kochi. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Ramesh from Kochi.
Yes,
Good evening.
I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Chandrayaan-3, please don't change my name. And we are all excited. And congratulations to the reporter who has reported from Jammu. I'm getting really goosebumps when he's reporting. I'm sitting at home.
Yes.
And congratulations to the ISRO team. And I'm sure that it will land very well and will be an exciting and, fantastic moments for the country and the world. I wish them and pray for all the very best for this launch.
Mr. Ramesh, Shashi Tharoor just got into trouble a few days ago because he tweeted a meme that mentioned something about Malayalis on the moon. Would you like to say something about that?
Well, I'm not a Malayali. I'm Indian first, but I have settled down here. Malayalis on the moon is always, they just make some memes that I would not like to get into that. But whether Malayali, we are all Indians, whether Malayali, whether Telugu.
Yes, India on the moon it is going to be, and India will be the first one on the moon, on the southern side of the moon. Fingers crossed for that. We've also got another caller calling in from Chennai. Narsimhan, please go ahead.
A very exciting moment, electrifying moment. It is like a final over in a T20 match where India is going to win. Okay. Hello?
Yes, sir.
It's a proud moment for all Indian, and my deepest appreciation and congratulations to all the scientists who are directly or indirectly involved in this great mission. And once again, it's a very proud moment for all 1.4 billion Indians. Jai Hind.
Right. Thank you, sir. But many would say it's not a T20 match. It is actually a test match because a lot of research and effort goes into a mission like this becoming a success. But there are a lot of technical aspects also that are involved that people like us rarely get to know about or even want to know about. But because it is such a historic moment for us, Swati, I will take it over to you to break it down for our viewers. What exactly are the components of this Chandrayaan-3 that is going to make a landing today?
Absolutely. Priya, what we have here with us is a 3D printed model of the lander Vikram and the rover Pragyan, which has been created by a company called Auto Abode. I also have an expert here, Mr. Selvamurthy. He is the former DG DRDO and Vice Chancellor of Amity University. And it's very important here to also highlight to our viewers. So, Mr. Selvamurthy, till this point of time, ISRO had, option of delaying or changing the schedule, but now it has given a go-ahead for landing, so there is no question of delaying it or rescheduling it to 27th, isn't it?
Absolutely right, because now the decision has been taken. We are going ahead with the mission of landing, so the go-ahead has been given. The countdown, real countdown has started now, And we are just expecting the moment 6:04 p.m. today that we should be, this lander will be touching down on the lunar surface, doing a soft landing. Because there's a lot of complexity is there in the soft landing
Can you point out some of the changes? Is this the same that was part of the Chandrayaan-2? Are there changes and what are they?
Yes. The first thing is the legs which should take the high impact. Even it is coming down to 10 meters, then it has to drop down. These legs have to take that impact. So the impact test has been done. It is ruggedized so much that this will take the impact. The second thing is they have put additional 2 cameras.
Right.
So even if one camera loses the sight and we don't get the images, the other camera would function. So the redundancy has been built in this lander. The third aspect is they have also built XYZ, that is 3 angles in which it has to move before it lands.
Right.
So those velocity adjustment, vector adjustment systems have also been built in the system.
You spoke about the camera. Now the camera will have to take images and then compare it to the data that is stored. That is also one of the changes made in Chandrayaan-3, isn't it? Now Chandrayaan-2 had to take a decision and spot the landing area, but Chandrayaan-3 has to just take images, compare it to the data fed already.
Yeah. See, it has to look for the landing site, where exactly is it safe? Is there any obstacles? Is there any craters? Or is there any the rocks available there which will damage the lander and subsequently the rover inside? So that is why these cameras will actually take a decision to look at the built-in images which is given, which is there in the memory, and then they will compare and see that if even if it's still it's an uncomfortable zone to land, then it has enough fuel. There is enough fuel have been put. It can traverse to another location and then land there.
Enough fuel and enough power as well, because additional solar panels have been placed both on the lander and the rover. So irrespective of how it lands, it should have enough power to operate, isn't it?
Absolutely. Because now earlier it used to be only on 2 sides.
Right.
Now they have put it on all 4 sides, the solar panel. So this will power this lander very well, so that this will last for a longer time over there.
All right. Let's focus quickly on the rover as well. Now this ramp is in fact one of the panels. After the lander lands, the panel unfolds, it creates this ramp and comes out the rover. Tell us something about the rover also, including the logos that have been embossed on the wheels.
See, the mission, Chandrayaan-3 mission, has got one important component is the soft landing.
Right.
The second important is to carry out the experiment subsequently.
Absolutely.
Which will look at the atmospheric conditions, look at the elemental analysis, chemical analysis, electrons, and also the ionic changes which happens, temperature variations which happens, and the thermal conductivity of the system. Everything has to be measured. So that is the second part.
Yes, so that will be carried out by the rover.
Both lander
and
as
rover.
well as rover. So you have about 4 payloads here and 2 payloads over there.
Yes.
So this will give the complete topography, terrain, as well as the chemical, elemental composition, the atmospheric gases available. So all this will be measured by these sensors and their payloads.
Right. Quickly before we toss back to the studio, sir, tell us about the landing area also, which has been expanded.
Right. See, this is yet another to provide a greater tolerance for the whole system. The previous Chandrayaan-2 had only 500 to 500 meters is the landing site, which was, so the tolerance is much less.
Right.
But this has been increased to about 4 kilometers to 2.5 kilometers, which will give a greater tolerance for landing site as well. So this is yet another, and then also the velocity with which it will come down. Earlier the tolerance limit was 2 meters per second, but in this lander, it has been increased to 3 meters per second.
Right.
So these are all the modifications.
So all the changes made to ensure that the soft landing does happen this time around. And like Mr. Selvamurthy pointed out, the real countdown has begun now, and the real job, in fact, of the lander rover and the entire team that will be going through tons of data once it is transmitted after soft landing will begin now. Back to you, Priya.
Right, 1 hour, 10 minutes roughly left for Chandrayaan to make a landing on the moon. Thank you, Swati, for joining us with those details. We take a very quick break. Do not go anywhere. On the other side, non-stop coverage with the most in-depth analysis as well as a simplistic breakdown of what is going to happen on the other side.